Hey, everybody. Welcome into week one start sits. Thank you all for joining me. We got to get some people in here first. Let's see if we are going to get some folks trickling in here. The start sit decisions are always important. We are lagging a little bit here, but I want to welcome you into the first week of the torturous decisions that we have. Drop your questions in the chat, and we're going to discuss it all. Let's let some people get in here first. We're getting our inactives rolling in, and we got to get some of the people in here so we can discuss some of the questions and some of the issues that we're going to be dealing with today. It looks like it's official. Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz are going to play. And it looks like Kendre Miller is out for this week, as we thought. Fire up Jamal Williams. Let's see here. What else we got? Mark Andrews is officially inactive, folks. We knew that, though. Isaiah Likely was always going to be the pivot here. But if you have questions about what you want to do today and what you're going to be facing in week one, certainly throw them up here. The Darren Waller one is an interesting situation because I'm hearing that maybe the situation isn't as bad as some people think, and that it's very possible that he's going to play this evening. The problem is he's the late game, and it looks like there may be bad weather there. So I'd be a little bit concerned about starting Darren Waller. So there are some pivots, though, in the late games. We've got Jake Ferguson, and on Monday night, we've got Tyler Conklin, Dawson Knox. It's unlikely that Dalton Kincaid is out there, but there are some pivots if you have Waller. Just make sure that your league allows you to swap that out to make the late pivot. So, all right, we're getting a few people trickling in here. So, folks, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll talk a little bit about your start sit stuff. But if you have not subscribed yet to the Patreon channel, give that a shot. I put up some week one thoughts over there about what we should be doing. And it looks like I've got a question here. JC, my man, thanks for the support, buddy. Juwan Johnson or Darren Waller? Well, I got to say, if you don't have a pivot in the late game, I'm not sure that I would roll with Waller. It's making me a little bit nervous. I did hear that maybe the situation isn't as bad, and maybe there's some gamesmanship going on there with Brian Dable. I think that would be pretty weird for him to be out there playing games with the injury report. So I bet you there is maybe some hamstring tightness or something there, but I've heard it's not that serious and that he's going to play. I don't know that I would make that a gamble, though, in week one. I think if it's Juwan Johnson or Darren Waller, I think I'm rolling with the safe play in Johnson. I have Waller in a couple leagues, but I'm preparing to make the pivot. So that's just personally, I'm not willing to take that risk. So I think if you have an early game play, I think you just have to play it. So that's my opinion on Waller, although it does look like he's probably going to play. But again, we have to keep in mind, if the weather is bad and it looks like it could possibly be, then I don't know that I would be rolling the dice on a guy who could go out there and slip in pregame and re-injure the hamstring or make it worse, or at any point during the game on slippery turf there. So I just don't know that I would be that interested in sticking around for Waller there. Having said that, most people don't have a nice pivot, so I get that. And if you want to take the gamble, there are late game pivots there. Let's look and see here what we've got. Vikings inactives are out. Looks like Cordero Patterson is out this week. He's not going to play. Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz are active. Mark Andrews is out. George Kittle is going to play. So where it looked like that was possible, that Kittle was going to sit, He is going to play. But again, talk about a guy that I'm concerned about. I don't know about Kittle. I think that he's your best option in most situations. You just got to roll with him. Again, drop your start sits questions in the chat. We're getting rolling here. We've only been on a couple minutes, but we're starting to get some people coming in. So drop your start sits questions. Anything else? This is really an AMA about waivers. I know that there was a lot of people talking on Twitter last night. It was just all about Isaiah Likely. What do I think about Likely this week? Well, we've seen the production when Mark Andrews has been out. The last time Likely played with Andrews out, though, he caught one ball. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen today. I still believe that Isaiah Likely is a top 10 play this week. So I think that it's something that, I would consider strongly unless I have another really good option. Hey, what's up, Daddy Yabo? I don't know that I know that name, but what's up, man? How's it going? Drop your questions in the chat. We're going to be here for about 30 minutes looking over the inactives and making sure that we know what's going on in week one. So, as I said, to recap here, no Kendre Miller, fire up Jamal Williams. No Mark Andrews, fire up Isaiah Likely. One of the things that I've been talking about all week, though, is be careful about what you're doing with some of these speculative ads that people are telling you to make. Puka Nakua, you know, guys that are going to step into a role just because of an injury doesn't mean that they are going to be productive. So I'd be very careful about some of those guys. I'm also going to be careful about my timeshare guys that are rookies, guys like Zach Charbonnet, Tank Bigsby. We just want to be real careful about that in week one. I just don't think that we can assume any kind of role there. I'm not willing to roll the dice. That's another thing that I've talked about with Breece Hall this week. I have Breece Hall on a ton of teams. That was really unintentional. Never thought that I'd be all in on Breece Hall, but apparently I am. That's a second half of the season play. That's a week 6 play on. And when I drafted Breece Hall in those leagues, I never intended to play Breece Hall this early in the season. So unless you're forced to do it, I am forced to play him in one league. But in one league, I'll tell you, I sat him for Brian Robinson because I'm hoping there's a positive game script there. I don't think the Cardinals D line is anything special. I'd rather go with Brian Robinson than Breece Hall. I understand that Hall is really explosive. And here's the thing. A lot of people have problems with start sits because they say, hey, this guy ended up getting 11 carries and 2 catches, and then he broke a long touchdown, and he had 17 points, and you told me to sit him. Folks, when I tell you to sit somebody, that doesn't mean that they're not going to produce. We deal in a game of probability here. This is the game that we play. The probability is that players that I'm telling you to sit are not going to produce. That doesn't mean they won't. And that's with a guy like Breece Hall. And I'm talking about like Van Jefferson. I'm starting Van Jefferson in a super deep league. I just happen to have Cooper Kupp in that league as well. But I don't believe that you should go out there and put your fantasy week 1 on a guy like Van Jefferson. So, I want you guys to keep in mind, and this is something that the great Matthew Berry really hammered into my head. It's probably been 8 or 10 years since he wrote his initial fantasy manifesto to start the season, his draft manifesto. And he said, it's a weekly game in which you have to score X number of points. And so you're trying to play the probability week to week. And that's really important to remember, that while it is a weekly game, it's also a probability game. And that's a season-long thing that we have to play as well. We have to balance those two. And I just don't believe that we should be going in there and making these speculative plays, especially in week 1. And that even extends to guys like Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Could those guys go off? Yes, of course they could. And I say that all the time. But we're dealing in probabilities here. And do you want to be all in on a situation like that for week 1? I certainly don't. What's up, Ham Porter? What's going on, buddy? Big supporter of mine. Thanks for coming in. Drop your questions there in the chat for week 1. Anything you're thinking about. Really, this is an AMA. We're going over the inactives of the early slate here. But this is an AMA. If you have guys that you're thinking about adding or guys that you are wondering whether or not you can roll with them in week one, that's really what we're after here, is an overall view of what we think about how we should be playing the rest of the season, because no actions even happened yet, except of course for Thursday night. Check out the Patreon for me breaking down the Detroit running back situation, the Kansas City running back situation, the Kansas City wide receiver situation. All right, now we got a couple questions rolling in here. Don't forget, Zach Moss is inactive for the Colts, not going to play this week. We knew he was doubtful yesterday. Cordero Patterson is going to miss as well. Couple questions here. Better end of the bench stash from Jeffrey Moon. What's up, Jeffrey? Puka Nakua or one of the Giants wide receivers? All right. Well, y'all are probably going to hate me right out of the gate here, but I think it's one of the Giants wide receivers. Personally, he's asking about Slayton or Campbell. Darius Slayton is my stash there, if you want to know. I like Puka. I think that he could be a good player, but the draft capital, I don't know. I'm just not buying into him stepping up and having a big role. I know it's a stash, so if you're talking about second half of the season, I can understand that. But personally, I'd rather roll with Darius Slayton there, Jeffrey. All right, Scotty's dropping in with a question about Chris Godwin or Khalil Herbert for the flex. Standard scoring, no PPR. That's interesting because my instinct is Chris Godwin here, but I really believe, Scotty, that I'd roll with Khalil Herbert this week. I don't know what we're going to see from the Green Bay Packers this week. I think it's very possible that this is an unexciting, sort of low scoring game. Now, we don't really know. I don't think these defenses are that great. But in a standard scoring, no PPR situation, I would not want to be rolling with Chris Godwin. A lot of the value that he's had in the past couple of years is that they love to use him on bubble screens and short throws. And that adds to his PPR value. I'd roll with Khalil Herbert there this week. Scotty, I think that he's looked great in the preseason. It's, I believe the coaching staff is going to give him a chance to run with this job. And I'm not saying that he's going to get some sort of 70% snap share, but I think he's going to get 50% of the snaps, and he's certainly going to carry the ball enough in a standard scoring. I love the chance for him to score a touchdown for you. Anthony Sutton says, Higbee or an Njoku? Concerns for the Rams this week without Kupp? Well, gosh, that's a great question. Yeah, I have some concerns. I mean, when you're playing at Seattle, they have a really tough secondary. They've got some really young stars there. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think the Rams are going to really try to run the ball this week. But I love Higbee this week. I'm a big Njoku guy, so this is really hard for me to pick Higbee over Njoku. But yeah, I'm rolling with Tyler Higbee this week. When Cooper Kupp was out last year, Higbee's target share was big. And I don't have the number in front of me, but I know that he had the most targets of his entire career last year, and that was partially due to Kupp missing a lot of time. So I really think that Higbee's the guy that we're looking at, and I'd roll with him over Njoku this week. I like David Njoku. I'm a big fan, but Tyler Higbee's my pick there. Now, Ham is asking about whether or not we're rolling out Waller playing someone who's 100% healthy. So I led the show with this, and let me, excuse me. I know there's a lot of people here who weren't here at the beginning of the show, but let me give you my Waller take. I think this is an interesting inflection point here, if I may, because Waller, it sounds to me, I've heard this from two different places, that it's possible that Daboll is playing up this situation. I find that a little hard to believe, just because I don't know that an NFL coach is out there playing games, pretending a guy's hurt when he's not. So I really think there is concern there for Waller, but it sounds to me like he'll play. So rather than it being like a willful game playing thing from Daboll, I really think they're just listing it because there probably is a little bit of an issue there. So my problem with this is I don't know that I want to roll the dice with Waller in possibly rainy conditions tonight. So I'd play someone who's 100% healthy. But Ham, if you want to drop your options in the box down there, in the chat box there, maybe I could give you a better, thought about which guy. But your late game pivots, you've got Jake Ferguson there in Dallas. You've also got Tyler Conklin on Monday night. Dawson Knox Monday night is possibly available. So if you decide to roll with Waller, what I do is make sure that I have a spot on my team, or maybe even add one of those guys now. My pick would be Tyler Conklin. I think that Rodgers has always liked his tight ends in the red zone, and I look for Tyler Conklin to have a nice year with Rodgers. So if I'm looking for a late pivot, it's my rank would be Conklin first, Dawson Knox second, and Jake Ferguson third. Obviously, if Dalton Kincaid is out there, you want to grab him, but I doubt that he's out there in your league. So that's my Waller take. I'm just concerned about it. I'm trying to bench him wherever I can. Having said that, if he goes, man, he could be a monster play. I get waiting, but just have that pivot ready. All right, so Beck's dog is asking pick 3 at wide receiver. It's got Ridley, DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, Jordan Addison, or Rashad Bateman. All right, well, I think you nailed your 3 right off the top there. I'd go with Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, and Deontay Johnson. I think that the Steelers, first of all, let's take it back to front. I think the Steelers are probably going to have a little bit of trouble moving the ball on the ground. So I think they're going to have to throw. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be a low scoring game. It's one of the lowest totals on the slate, the San Francisco Pittsburgh game. So I'd be a little concerned about the Pittsburgh offense. But when they move the ball, they're going to have to throw. DJ Moore and Calvin Ridley, I think those are no brainers there. I'm not really scared of the Packers defense, and DJ Moore coming right out of the gate. I think that that's the play. Jordan Addison and Rashad Bateman make me a little nervous. And this goes back to my general mindset about week 1 that I've been talking about. Jordan Addison is in a position to step up and produce right away, but we don't really know that. And it's one of those things that we assume as a fantasy community. And this is something that I think we have a blind spot for. We assume that this rookie is going to step up and garner attention right away. Now, that could be. He could step in into 8 targets today. We don't know that. But that's exactly the point. We don't really know. We don't know how much KJ Osborne is going to come off the field. And look at what Jahmyr Gibbs did on Thursday night. Explosive player. His ability jumped off the page at us. But yet, he didn't get the touches that we wanted because he's a rookie and it was his first game. That's very possible. Jordan Addison could be worked in slowly here. And one of the things I rail on all summer long is those rookies take time to develop. They are great second half plays, but I wouldn't be rolling with Addison this week. Rashad Bateman's certainly tempting, and I have him in a couple leagues. I'd love to stick him in my lineup, but I want to see what the target distribution looks like, and I want to see what the pass tendencies are. I'm not comfortable with Addison or Bateman quite yet, Bex. I'd roll Ridley, DJ Moore, and Deontay Johnson. And Porter says Waller or Ferguson. Yeah, keep Ferguson there as your pivot. But if Waller's active and you've got Waller or Ferguson, I'm going Waller. You want to go with that upside there when you're talking about Waller or Ferguson. I'm saying if you have a guy like maybe Everett, somebody in that neighborhood that you really feel good about, then I'd probably roll with Everett. But if it's Waller or Ferguson, I'm waiting and I'm going to go with Waller there. JJ, what's up, buddy? Hey, thanks, man. It's good to hear from you. Thanks for dropping in. Really appreciate it. No problem, Ham. No problem. Anthony wants to know, I mentioned Rams running backs in Seattle. How about Akers or Dotson PPR league? Woo, that's a tough one. And I got to tell you, that is the exact situation I have in my home league. I've got Akers and Dotson. I will say this. I love Dotson's upside, but now that McLaurin's playing and it appears that he's off the injury report, the Twitter docs say that McLaurin's dip in production is going to last for about 3-4 weeks and that he's going to have maybe 10 to 20% dip in production. So I still think Dotson is a nice play, but I'm rolling with Akers there. Last year's numbers against Seattle were really strong for Cam Akers. I think the way that you attack Seattle is on their front 7 because they've got a nice secondary. So I'm rolling with Akers instead of Dotson. I love the floor. I love the volume. And I love the chance for him to punch in some touchdowns. I know there's been rumors about Kyron Williams, but look, we hear those rumors all the time. And I'm not saying that Kyron Williams isn't going to play because I think he is. And I think he's probably going to steal some passing down work. But Cam Akers wasn't going to go out and play 98% of the snaps. They need somebody else to rotate in there. He's going to be a rotational player. I believe that Akers is still going to see 65 to 70% of the snaps. I love Akers this week against Seattle. I'm worried a little bit about the offense, but look, folks, Matthew Stafford, we tend to forget the shell of Matthew Stafford last year isn't who we're looking at this year. He was being managed last summer on limited reps during training camp. So I think that changed this summer where he was practicing every day. He seems to be the healthiest he's been in a couple years. I know Cooper Kupp's missing, but they still have a reasonably good offense with Matthew Stafford running the show. I don't think it's going to be awesome, but I think that Akers is the play there instead of Dotson. All right. If Andrews and Beckham are out, I love Bateman this week. Yeah, no, I understand. Andrews is out. He's saying if Andrews is out, Andrews is definitely inactive. I don't believe that Odell Beckham is inactive, but it sounds like he's a little banged up. And look, I never really had a lot of love for Beckham anyway in this situation. So, I understand the play for Bateman, and I'm not saying I don't think Bateman can do anything, but I'm always skeptical about these narratives that we assume in the offseason that they're going to throw the ball more and that the offense is going to look a certain way. I think it takes a big play from Bateman. I'm not sure that we're going to see the volume. But hey, that's my opinion. I want to see it. I'm a show me guy. I'm a bit of a nit in that regard, but I think week 1, the way to do it is to play it safe. My advice is going to be very different in week 10 than it is in week 1. And I think right now I'm a little concerned about how we're going to see or what we're going to see. Chief Matt says, is it time to panic? Yes, Matt. Yes. No. I'm just kidding. This is tough, man. This is tough. There are so many things that we're having to deal with. I drafted Cooper Kupp in a couple of high competition leagues that was a gamble that I made that, maybe I shouldn't have made it, but it is difficult this time of year. It is feeling like we need to panic. But listen, I said this yesterday on my Patreon network. Cooper Kupp is not a guy that I want to panic about yet. I understand the situation looks kind of wonky, but people keep talking about the nerve issue. And everything I'm hearing from respected Twitter docs is that the nerve issue is really not that unusual. It's one of those things where there's often a nerve problem behind that hamstring issue. So that's not something that I'm not concerned about. I think that it sounds to me like there's a very good chance he could come off IR and play in week 5. And if he doesn't, he plays in week 6 or week 7. Isn't that what we want? We want him to get healthy and we want him to be Cooper Kupp down the stretch. And if he is, he's going to be massive for your fantasy team. So let's not panic yet, Matt. I don't know what exactly you're referring to, but let's not panic about all the news yet quite this week. Scotty's got another question for you. James Cook or Rachaad White for running back half-point PPR? So you've come to the wrong spot if you want me to recommend James Cook this week. I think that Jets defense is tough, man. It's a tough nut to crack. Buffalo has always struggled against that defense. It's frustrating to look down at my lineup week 1 and see that I've got a lot of Diggs and Davis and Josh Allen and know that they've got the Jets week 1. That's going to be a highly, highly, highly motivated Jets squad to show that they belong. If you've been watching any Hard Knocks, you know that team's mindset at this point is let's punch people in the mouth and show them that we're here and that we're no longer just somebody that's supposed to be good, that we actually are good. And like I said, the Bills have struggled against that Jets D. So I would, if I'm you, I'm staying away from any Bills not named Stephon Diggs or Josh Allen. I'm playing Gabe Davis in a real deep league. But other than that, it's Rachaad White for me, Scotty. And I'm not sure that it's real close, in my opinion. I think that the Minnesota defense is a far cry from the Jets defense. And I never really believed in James Cook that much anyway. But that's sort of a me problem. But I realize that is a close decision. I'd still roll with Rachaad White for me. All right, Bex. Is it me? There's a lot more betting line moving last minute. Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, it's interesting to me that Travis Kelce moved that betting line so much. That was pretty huge, but obviously it was important. Non-quarterbacks don't usually move that betting line that much. Matt, yeah, not really panicking. Yeah, no problem, Matt. Drop a specific question in there, Matt, but I know the comment was meant to be funny. I get you. Haas says, never stepped into an auction draft so confidently. I love hearing that. Love hearing that. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that. It's just one of those things where this is going to sound corny as hell, but whatever little bit of money I'm making doesn't matter to me. What matters is hearing that stuff and hearing that you're stepping into that auction room and feeling like you're, about to kill it. Really, really, love hearing that stuff. Thank you, Haas. Scotty, no problem, man. Today is the first step. Let's go win some titles, folks. I really appreciate you all tuning in. We're going to go about 10 more minutes here. Make sure that we've got all the questions answered, but don't forget to check your inactives on your squad and make sure that you've made the swaps. I know that sounds silly, but I go through my lineups on Saturday night and say, am I good to go? And then I come back on Sunday morning for one final pass through. I don't know how many leagues you're in. I'm only in, well, I shouldn't say my number. I'm only in 11. Am I a serious fantasy analyst if I'm only in 11 leagues? But yeah, I take a pass through on Sunday morning again. Make sure that the weather, make sure that the decisions that you made last night aren't affected by the inactives today. JC, what's up, brother? Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that so much. JC was part of the Minivan Chronicles and Expo at the Expo when we jammed 37 people in my minivan like a clown car. So it was great meeting JC. Folks, give me your start sit questions. JJ, my number of leagues changes if my wife is around. Yeah, my wife asked me that question this year and she said, how many? And when I counted it up, I had actually dropped a couple redraft leagues, but lo and behold, I ended up in a couple more. So here we are. But she's not around, JJ. Come on. I'm in 59. Just kidding. All right, hit me with those start sit questions. A couple of things I want you to keep in mind. There is some weather floating around out there. Um, there are some games that could be affected, and let me pull that up and just talk about that super quick because I want you to keep in mind this is the kind of stuff that we have to pay attention to right now. Somebody asked me about Daniel Bellinger. I just am not sure that I'm that excited about Bellinger. I'd much rather have um, I'd rather have Jake Ferguson. I'd rather have Tyler Conklin. So that's one of those things that I'm not looking at Bellinger. I think that he could obviously be fine, but I'm not. That's not my pick here. All right, we got a couple more questions. I'm pulling up this weather information here. So start sit questions are filling in. Mooney, Josh Seeger says Mooney, Bateman, or Van Jefferson. Ooh, that's a tough one. Okay, you know what? I'm going with Bateman here because I know that I said earlier that I want to see it, but these are unusual situations. The Mooney pick, I want to know that Mooney's healthy. It sounds like he is, but this is not a high volume pass offense where I want to rely on two pass catchers in Chicago. I think Mooney could have his opportunities this year, but I'm not sure we're going to know when those are. Van Jefferson is the classic thing that I think that we do in the fantasy community. And I'm going to issue a caveat here. I have Van Jefferson on a deep team. So I don't know how deep this league is, Josh, but I don't think that Van Jefferson is a bad play. But I'm not expecting more than 6 to 8 points out of Van Jefferson. I just don't know that he's going to be a volume player. Now, it's very possible he breaks a long one, but that's the thing. Him and Bateman are kind of the same in that regard, and I trust Bateman more. I understand the problems and the warts with both guys, but I think Bateman is my pick of that trio, Josh. I'd try to catch lightning in a bottle there. Hope that we get 4 for 100 and a touch with Bateman like he started out last year. So JJ's number is 16. I don't know what number that is, JJ, if that's leagues or if that's another number that we don't want to know about. But thank you for that. Scott says McLaurin or Juju. Absolutely going McLaurin there. I like Juju this year more than most. I'm not, I don't have him on a bunch of teams, but I think that the Patriots offense is going to be better than we think. And it's quite possible that Juju is going to be a weekly wide receiver 3 or flex option. Having said that, I'm going McLaurin, even though there is a little bit of a production dip, and that's something that Twitter docs are very, straightforward about. There's going to be a production dip for McLaurin here over the short term. I still like him in a nice matchup over Juju because I think the talent gap there is massive. And I think the Patriots offense is going to be better. But if I had to bet right now, I'd absolutely take McLaurin over Juju. Bexdog says, does best ball count? No, it does not, because my number would be disgusting if we were talking about best ball. I'm talking about solely, I've only had 9 redraft, and of course the fishbowl and a couple dynasty, but Josh, that's where good. That's where we're the same mind there, Josh. Um, yeah, let's see what Van Jefferson does. He's never been a guy that we could count on for volume. He's always had hands problems in the past, a la Kadarius Toney. He's not that bad, but he's always had hands problems. Stafford seemed to trust him when he played last year, and the two played together, but they didn't play together very much. Keep in mind, Van Jefferson was hurt last year, and a lot of people are looking at Van Jefferson and saying he can't play. He came off a knee injury. He was never really right. This is a lot more time for him to recover. I think we're going to see a different Van Jefferson. I'm not advocating for you running him out there in your lineup in a 10 or 12 teamer this week, but I do think he's a guy you want to hold on to for the short term while Cup is out. All right. Wade says, any concern on Ramondre with the illness? Mostert would be the play instead. Oh, boy. Well, my concern with Ramondre doesn't really have to do with the illness. I think that that's one of those things where when they suit up and they get on the field, that kind of goes away. So I'm not concerned with the illness. I am concerned with the Eagles front 7. So Ramondre could be a difficult play. The thing with Mostert is, and I don't want to make life difficult for you, Wade, but I might think about Mostert. Devin Achane is inactive. He's not going to play this week. The Dolphins are rolling out there with Mostert and Ahmed. So I think Mostert's in line for a ton of touches this week. And that is a Chargers front 7 that was super soft against the run last year. We don't know if that's going to be the case this year. I've always, preached a little bit of caution when we're talking about going into a new year and assuming we know what a defense is going to look like. But all we can go off is the data that we had last year. They were one of the worst teams in the league against the run last year. Raheem Mostert set up for a pretty big workload today. I would consider Raheem Mostert over Ramondre Stevenson. I know that sounds crazy. Y'all are going to click off the YouTube page here right now when you hear that. But Mostert's in for I just lost 3 viewers because I said Raheem Mostert. Never mind, Stevenson. No, I'm just kidding. Mostert's going to have a monster workload here, and that's going to be a high-scoring game too. Don't forget, one of the things that we do as fantasy players is we like to, pick. We like to get right down to the nuts and bolts of expected points added and expected fantasy points and pass rate over expectation, blah, 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 blah. That Chargers Dolphins game is one of the highest totals on the slate. They're going to be going up and down the field in that game. I think that Raheem Mostert's a nice play this week. All right. So JC, thanks, man. Love you too, buddy. Folks, get your last couple questions in here. I'm going to end this in about 5 minutes so that I can get to my lineups and see my family before I disappear into the dark hole that is my basement. Let's see what else. I was looking for the weather report, and let's see here. Where is that weather report I just saw? Oh, man, this is great video. I understand that, everybody. It's good stuff that you're looking at here. But I can't find the weather report. I know that there were some games that are in question. So I know that the Giants and Cowboys tonight. All right, weather report. All right, so if you're not following Matt FF Dynasty, do so. That's where I get my information. And the East Coast has a lot of possible games. We've got yes, here we are. Thunderstorms hitting the East Coast. Arizona, Washington, possible. Dallas, Giants, possible. Houston, Baltimore is possible. Looks like Vegas, Denver is possible rain. So we've got 3, 4, 5 games that could be affected by the weather this week. Just make sure you check that out. I'm not sure there's enough for me to really sway you from playing players in those games, though. So, all right. Well, to recap, folks, let's not panic in week 1, okay? Let's keep in mind the number one, I want you starting the players that you drafted to start. Let's not get cute and bench your starters for the hot waiver wire pickup. Folks, we haven't played a game yet. So the waiver wire is hot because there's a lot of injuries. But just because somebody's stepping in for an injured player doesn't mean that they're going to produce. I think there are situations in which that is not a bad play. The likely situation, Van Jefferson, I get that kind of stuff. That's totally fine if you're in that situation. But let's not panic. Play the players you drafted to play, and let's go out there and see the usage for some of these rookies and some of these timeshare players before we go off and decide that's the guys that we want to be starting. Yes, Anthony, Matt FF Dynasty is the guy that I look at for weather stuff. There are a couple guys out there. Chris Allen is one of them as well. But yeah, Matt FF Dynasty, he puts out a weather thread every week as well. So all right, guys, that's going to do it. The questions have slowed down, so we're going to do this every single week. We're going to get on here at 11:30 for the inactives. We're going to do about a half hour talking about your inactives. We're going to, of course, as we go through the season, it's going to get tougher and tougher with the decisions that we have to make. But stay tuned to the Patreon network as well. We're going to go over utilization every week. We're going to do a recap of the week. We're going to do a preview of the coming week, and we're going to do Drew's Clues, the utilization statistics every week. On Wednesday, it's going to be one of my favorite things that we do every week. What should we be looking at for waivers of the future? Which guys are ready to break out, but their fantasy stats just haven't shown it yet? So hook into that midweek on the Patreon network. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's go have an awesome week 1. Love all the support from all of you and love talking football with you every week. This is the highlight of my week is getting to talk to all of you. So let's go crush week 1. Feel free to hit me up on Patreon or on Twitter, and let's go win some fantasy games. All right. Love y'all. Talk to you next week.